It's happened to you, it's happened to me. Some of us are repeat offenders, and others of us do it every once in a while. I'm talking about procrastination. Kicking the can down the road, running from your problems, however you want to think about it. This seemingly innocent act of putting stuff off that we know needs to get done because there will probably be consequences if we don't do it. So, what are the spiritual implications of this? What are some practical ways to combat and overcome it? And why do we even do it in the first place? Tune in to find out. Welcome back to Life at Peace, everyone. So it's just me today. I know for the past few episodes, you've gotten to hear from my mom, my dad, and my sister. And they all did great interviews. If you didn't catch any of them, you can go back and listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But we talked extensively about God's peace and the power of creativity and the fact that He created us to be creative. And that's when we're most like Him, we're emulating Him the best, is when we go out and create and use the gifts and talents He's given us. So it was great talking with him about all that. And it's been about a month, because of those interviews, it's been about a month since it was just a solo episode with me. So that's what you got today and for the next few episodes. But we're going to talk about procrastination. So, yeah, we're all very familiar with this, but I'm going to open up with a definition. So officially, I think this is according to Merriam-Webster, procrastination is the act of delaying or postponing something, usually a task, even knowing that there could be negative consequences. So the way I translated this in my mind when I was looking this up and researching for this video, procrastination is a conscious decision. There's no such thing as accidentally procrastinating. Because usually when we're putting stuff off, we're very aware of what we have to do. We maybe have a heavy workload, or we're stressed, or we got some other stuff going on that we would rather give our attention to. So we understand thoroughly that we are running away from something. But what's not as easy to pinpoint all the time may be the cause of the procrastination. So there's quite a few that I've looked up and put together in getting ready for this episode. So I'm about to share with you guys, I think it's 9 or 10 reasons or causes of procrastination. And it's very likely that a lot of these, or at least one of them, will resonate with y'all in some way. But the first one I have on here is something called task aversiveness. Now, this happens because we are given a task to do, or we know that we have something to do, and it seems boring, daunting, challenging. It's going to require a lot of energy. We're not interested in it. The list goes on. So this is probably what most people think about when they hear the word procrastination. It's just you're trying to avoid a task because you don't want to do it. So it seems pretty simple. An example I have for this one is when I was finishing up my MBA earlier this year. So this was back in April, a couple weeks out from graduation. One of my final assignments, actually it was my final assignment, was a 20-page paper on a culture of my choice. So I wrote my paper on Mexico and different facets of the culture, including business, communication, the economy, and language. And so I got to pick whatever aspects of culture I wanted and structure the paper according to the way I saw fit. But it had to be at least 20 pages. That was the minimum. And this was my final assignment standing between me and graduation. And I'm actually pretty proud of how I started the assignment because I didn't wait until the week before, as a lot of my classmates did. The assignment was due April 17th, and I actually started it on April 1st. So truthfully, I could have started earlier than that, but I just didn't. So I'm not going to try to make up a story about that. I just didn't get to it before then. So April 1st, I started the paper, and I'm glad I did because it took a lot more energy and effort than I had in my mind, which, to be fair, 20 pages, I wasn't expecting it to be done in 2 hours. But all that to say, there were definitely days, because remember, I was working full time while I was going to school. There were days I did not want to work on that paper. I wanted to do anything but. I wanted to just come home and crash and just sit on the couch and relax and turn my brain off, but I couldn't do that because I needed to get this assignment done. So, the paper, honestly, there were times I wanted to avoid it because I knew it was going to require a lot of mental energy. So I was just to write the paper that I wanted it to be written, I needed to put in a certain amount of energy for it, and that was sometimes daunting to me. So the first cause of procrastination, task aversion. Second one I have here on my list is perfectionism. So we would rather do nothing than to do something imperfectly or mess it up. And this is actually a pretty common issue I notice among my college students. I teach and advise freshmen, and so I have a lot of these conversations with them. And I also have conversations with my upperclassmen about going for internships and getting everything polished and ready for their full-time jobs. And a question I usually get from my younger students, my freshmen and sophomores, is, like, how do I know what career to pick or what industry? Because I'll usually like to ask them right off the bat, why did they pick their major? I work with business students, so I always want to try to connect the dots between why they pick marketing or accounting or finance, like why those. So they're always questioning, how do I know that I've picked the right thing? And I often have to tell them, well, I mean, there's no way to know that. You just have to go through life and have some experiences, and maybe you'll end up liking it, maybe you won't. But the common prevailing fear I've sensed in my students is that they don't want to pick the wrong thing. They don't want to have to try some things before they get to the career that they want. And so even when it comes to just getting an internship or some other opportunity on campus, they will hesitate because they're like, is this really going to align with the direction I'm trying to go? Which, to be fair, it's nice that they're thinking about that, but they're sometimes so paralyzed by wanting to get the perfect, correct answer that they don't want to act at all. So they'll maybe put off pursuing certain opportunities because they're overthinking it. So that's how the perfectionism dimension ties into this. It's easy to procrastinate when you are just waiting for the perfect circumstances or the perfect opportunity or everything to line up a certain way. And we can't operate like that because that's just not, life doesn't work in a linear fashion like that, as we all know. The number 3 reason I have, and these aren't ranked in any particular order, it's just the way that I wrote them down. But the third cause of procrastination I have on here is anxiety. So this kind of ties into all the other causes, but it's, again, that daunting, you're drumming up in your head how you think a certain task is going to go, or maybe you're afraid you'll mess it up, or you won't be prepared for it, or any other number of reasons. And that anxiety paralyzes you, and you don't want to act. Which ties into number 4, the fear of failure. So again, this links over to, you'll see a lot of these are pretty interdependent on each other, and they're interrelated. But fear of failure, maybe you're new to something and you just don't want to fall on your face, which is a pretty natural emotion to have because I don't think anyone sets out wanting to mess stuff up. But here I have a couple of examples. So maybe if you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, or you're thinking about writing a book or starting a blog, or you're starting some other type of business or creative venture. Maybe you're really good at cooking, or you have some other talent that you want to showcase to other people. Like you feel like you've been brought into a season of your life where you can do that, but you hesitate to act on it because you don't want to fail. And so part of it is not wanting to mess up, but then we also don't want to be embarrassed, or we don't want to risk wasting resources. So especially from the business aspect, you don't want to waste money. You don't want to pay for things that you think might not even be worth it in the long run. So being afraid to fail, I'm sure that's pretty high up there for a lot of people with procrastinating. And it is natural to have those feelings of apprehension, and you want to save face and protect yourself from any type of shame or embarrassment. But you gotta draw the line somewhere. It's not sustainable, not healthy to live that way. The fifth, yeah, so we're getting down the list here. Number 5 reason for procrastination is prioritization of short-term mood. So you just want to live in the moment. You want to keep doing what you're doing. Maybe if you fall in this category, you often think, well, that's a tomorrow problem. I don't have to think about that right now, or I don't want to think about that right now. So just an example of this, maybe going out with your friends instead of staying home to clean up your house or to do a house project or work on something that I mean, it could be anything, but work on anything that you've maybe been running away from. Maybe filing your taxes if tax season is approaching. So it could be just ordinary, routine, adult tasks that you have to do that you're like, no, I'm not in the mood for that. I'm not going to do it. Number 6, feeling overwhelmed. So we procrastinate often because we feel like there's just too much going on. So for this one, I've got too much stuff, not enough time. And go look up the Space Bags commercial if that reference just went over your head. But yeah, that's what it boils down to. It's just there's too much stuff going on. We don't have enough hours in the day to get to everything. So we're having trouble prioritizing what needs to be done, which ties into number 7, poor time management. So now, that's not to say that when you're overwhelmed that you don't manage your time properly, because sometimes stuff like that just happens. I mean, I think back to my last semester of my master's degree. It was really, April was a crazy month, y'all. I was trying to get ready for my trip to Europe. I was trying to finish 2 papers that I had due, one of which I mentioned earlier in this episode. I was trying to move out of my apartment. Oh gosh, what else was going on? Those were just some of the big 3 things that were really taking up my mental energy. So I was very much overwhelmed, so much so that I got to work one day and just cried from anxiety. I was like, everything is important and I don't know what to spend time on first. So that's another common reason for procrastination is we know that we have a lot of stuff that's important, but again, when you procrastinate, there's always that one thing that you have had in the back of your mind that you have been deciding not to do for one reason or another. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe that's multiple things that you've run away from that you're now having to face at the same time. And so time management, of course, just how are you prioritizing your tasks? Poor time management could look like spending too much time on the wrong things. So, for example, we shouldn't always be resting or taking breaks. It's good to build breaks into your day and into your routine, as I'll talk about later, but you shouldn't always be doing that. If you're taking more breaks than you are working, then there's a problem there. And that's maybe some procrastination trying to disguise itself as you needing a break. Number 8 on the list is that we procrastinate because we set abstract goals. So I can identify very closely with this one. So an abstract goal would be a goal that it lacks specificity or clarity. And because it's so vague, it makes it easy to forego any type of accountability for completing that goal or accomplishing it. So examples of this, I'm going to start working out. I'm going to eat healthier. I'm going to read my Bible more. Now, those are all great ideas, but they're terrible goals. There is nothing specific in in any one of these 3. If you're going to start working out, great. What do you plan to do with that? Are you going to go on walks every day? Are you going to go to the gym 3 times a week? Are you going to exercise for 30 minutes a day? What are you specifically trying to do with working out? I'm going to eat healthier. Great. There's a lot of different diets out there. There's different ways to modify your current diet so that it's healthier. You're going to cut out more sugar. You're going to lower your carbs. You're going to eat fewer calories per day. Like what is your idea of healthier and how are you going to accomplish that? And then I'm going to read my Bible more. Great. Again, awesome idea, terrible goal. What are you going to do to read your Bible more? Are you going to read 2 chapters a day? Are you going to you're going to go through a Bible in a year plan? You're going to go through the New Testament, Old Testament? What does that look like? So setting an abstract goal, it can make you feel good about what you're doing or what you're telling people, but then there's no accountability there because you don't have anything specific anchoring you to that goal. So as long as you keep it wide open like that, it becomes easier and easier to procrastinate because your parameters for the goal are so wide. So I hope that makes sense to y'all, but that's one that I can identify pretty closely with, because what I'm currently trying to improve in my life is writing things down and keeping them in front of me every day, so that I don't get to the point where so I guess that I don't continue setting these abstract goals and being frustrated or being confused about why they're not happening or why I keep procrastinating. And number 9 on the list is something called inertia. So it's a term I first heard in science, and maybe you relate to that too. But the scientific definition is just an object in motion will stay in motion, or an object at rest will stay at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. So in other words, to translate it into more practical terms in your day-to-day life, it's easy to keep doing what you've been doing at the level you've been doing it. How to put this into a concrete example. Binging TV for 5 hours will make it pretty hard to want to get up and do some work. So if you're in a constant state of wanting to rest or do nothing or just slow around and not get stuff done, it's going to be pretty hard for you to suddenly want to change that. And the opposite is true too. If you're always used to moving around and getting your work done and checking off boxes on your to-do list, like I have a coworker at my job, she jokes with us, my work team, that at home she has such a hard time sitting still because she always is looking for something to do, and she thinks of things that she can work on around the house. So it goes both ways. You know, if you're always used to moving around, being on your feet, being active, then you might have a harder time resting or not working. And if you are always used to just lazing around, not doing too much, then it might be a challenge for you to set some boundaries there and actually work when it's time to work. So I've just shared with y'all 9 causes of procrastination. And hopefully, I mean, if you're honest with yourself, there's probably at least one of these that you can identify with, or that speaks to you more clearly than the others. And I'm right there with you. I'm a recovering procrastinator. According to my mom, I picked up the habit when I was in high school because I was hanging around the wrong friends. My friends weren't into drugs or anything like that, or living on the edge. But the people I was around in high school maybe weren't the most proactive at getting stuff done, and so that just kind of rubbed off on me. And so I was trying to recover from that through college and even now in my adult life. But just to let y'all in on how bad it was, I do have some personal examples. Woo! Some of these are really pretty embarrassing. So in high school, the first example, in high school I was part of an organization called Key Club, and it was a service organization. I think it might still be around. I think the parent club is called Kiwanis or something like that. But it's service-based, so the members of the organization participate in projects throughout the semester and the school year, and they partner with different organizations to put on events or to help out wherever it's needed. And I forget my specific role within Key Club, but I did a horrible job of executing it. Sidebar, my home life and my family situation was pretty turbulent at that time, and so not that that's an excuse, but it just kind of explains why I wasn't totally focused on stuff at school. So anyway, there was an event that our organization had signed up to help with, and for one reason or another, something happened to where we weren't able to participate anymore. But I dragged my feet in notifying the organization that we were supposed to volunteer with. So, the night before the event was supposed to take place, I emailed the contact person for the organization and told her that we would not be showing up to help. That's one of those memories that I just cringe every time I think about it, because that was so not handled well. It was so unprofessional. It was terrible. Oh my gosh, I still remember it very clearly. The night before it was supposed to happen, I sent the email. And I never got a response, probably because they were furious about the lack of communication and just the last minute notification. So that was awful, you guys, and gosh, yeah. So that was a really bad case of that. So procrastination in action, example number one. Example number two, again in high school. So told you, my mom said this is where it started, and I believe her. In high school, I took a physics class. I took two of them, but this is for physics one that I'm talking about. We had a few different projects throughout the year, but one of them that I remember distinctly was that we had to build a car. Not like a drivable car, but it was like a model of a car that would actually go and roll around on the ground, all that kind of stuff, that it worked. And as was typical for me at this time, I told my parents about the project last minute. So I got the supplies to build the car, and I think part of it involved some styrofoam. I was going to use that for the wheels. I forget the specific material that I used for the body of the car, or the chassis. And I don't remember a whole lot of details outside of that, but I got the materials and what I thought would be enough to scrape something together. And scraped together it was, because the very next day it was time to present. And the way the presentations were set up, we were going to be in the gym, and we were going to go one at a time in front of the whole class and put our cars on the floor. And our physics teacher was going to be right there ready to grade it. And we were going to rev up our car and let it roll, and the object was to get it to roll as far as possible. And I think that's where some of our grade came from. Well, I was dreading going because I looked at everyone else's cars that was going before me, and they were much better constructed. They actually looked like they had a fighting chance on the gym floor. And mind you, this was a high school gym floor, so the slick, shiny, glossy floor. You know that my styrofoam didn't have any traction. Okay, so you can already tell where this is headed. So it was finally my turn to do my project, so I stepped up pretty much knowing that how it was going to turn out. I put it on the floor, and I tried to rev it up like I was actually doing something. And it scooted forward like, skirt, like it barely moved. Styrofoam wheels on a slick gym floor. And I don't know if my teacher was trying to hold back a laugh or anything like that, but he saw my first attempt and he was like, okay, that's okay, just try it again. I think I tried it maybe 2 or 3 more times. And the car didn't go anywhere, y'all. You know that. Styrofoam on a slick floor. I royally failed that project. Big time. And I was not one bit surprised. So, procrastination, example number 2. Example number 3, this isn't really anything specific, but it's more just the way of life that I had back then. I was always surprised by my tests. I can't tell you how many times I showed up to class and professor or teacher was like, okay, everyone clear off your desks, put your phones away, your computers, and get out a pencil and your Scantron. Or, I mean, I guess the Scantrons were provided back then, but yeah, they say clear off your desk, get out your pencil. And all the times that I sat down to that news and remembered right before the test was being handed out that my professor had told us a week or 2 before. Oh my gosh, teacher, I'm in college mode. My teacher had told us a week or 2 before that we were going to have an exam. And I fumbled my way through high school like that. Didn't check my planner, didn't check my syllabus, wasn't consistent about writing stuff down, so I was always playing catch up. Procrastination example number 4. Bunch of different papers. So this is moving into college now, but I've had a lot of papers that I've written that I did in the 11th hour because, again, didn't plan, didn't write things down, didn't check my syllabus. Now, I got better at the syllabus checking thing in college, but it still wasn't great. I remember my last semester of undergrad, I had a class called Psych 302. It was a research methods class for psychology, since I was a psych major. And there was a lab component to that. So we always had lab reports that were due each week. And I always ended up typing my lab report the morning of class, without fail, every week. You'd think I would have learned, and I just didn't. And procrastination example number 5. So this is at the workplace. There are days when I have so much to do that I will distract myself by focusing on minor, less important tasks just so that I don't have to dedicate the mental or emotional energy to do the larger tasks that actually require my attention. Sound familiar to anybody? Anybody do it? Okay, just me. So, there you have it, y'all. Those are all personal examples, and there's a whole lot more, but those are the ones that were top of mind. And now I will say, I was a very good student somehow. I graduated top 11% of my high school class, miraculously. And through my undergrad, finished with a 3.6 GPA. Had several 4.0 semesters. So it's not that I was a bad student. But I didn't have great habits. But I still managed to scrape by with honors. But the problem with procrastinating is that even if what you complete and turn in or submit is good, it's not as good as it could have been. And maybe that doesn't bother everyone listening to this. Okay, maybe good enough is fine with you. But for those of you who know that you have more in you and more to offer, it should maybe sting a little to know that, man, this could be so much better if I put more work into it, or if I dedicated more time to it. When we procrastinate, we're not representing ourselves in the best light. Because again, we could do something that's actually pretty good, maybe even above average, but how much better could it have been if we hadn't waited until the last minute? And so, as I transition to this next section, I'm going to be talking about how can procrastination be harmful to us. So there's a lot of ways. Number 1, it hurts our credibility or our reputation, particularly if we are working with other people or if someone is depending on us. So can tie this directly back to that Key Club example I started with. There was an organization that was depending on us on Key Club at Ridgepoint High School to do the right thing and to show up and honor our word. And, we had decided some weeks back that we weren't going to be able to work with them. But instead of notifying them right at the moment I got that news, I sat on it and ended up telling them last minute, very last minute. And so I'm sure that put a sour taste in their mouth about Key Club at our school and probably gave them pause for wanting to work with us in the future. Procrastination can also be harmful to us because it stresses us out. Y'all, oh man, there's just so much stress. And if you're a habitual procrastinator, then maybe you've gotten used to the stress or it doesn't bother you anymore. But it is stressful. It's objectively true that when you have weeks to work on something and you work on it with days left to get it done, how can you not be stressed by that? And of course, there might be some people listening that think, well, I do my best work under pressure or at the last minute or in the 11th hour. Okay, I mean, if you say so, but just think of all the stress that could be eliminated if you were just to start earlier. Like how much more time you'd have to be able to dedicate to other things. Because when you procrastinate, procrastinators are hardworking people because they have to be. Like there's no choice, because when you procrastinate, everything is due at the same time, or you've got multiple things competing for your attention that maybe you could have alleviated if you had started on one thing at a certain point in time. But no, instead everything is due now and it has to be done now. So you can't tell me that's not stressful. Number 3, procrastination keeps us from living up to our potential. So just again, I already alluded to this earlier, but it keeps us from representing ourselves in the best light. So we turn in some rushed, kind of lower quality work. Maybe if you're on the job, or if you're a student listening to this and you have schoolwork that you kind of rush through just to get the grade done. Again, it could be passable, but is that the best representation of yourself? And is that who you want people to see when they look at you and think about you for getting work done? That's up to you. Number four, procrastinating keeps us in a reactive mode instead of being proactive. So we're always trying to play catch up to stuff. We're just kind of reacting to what happens and what life throws at us and what each day holds. Whereas if we were to plan our time and prioritize and exercise good time management, we would be proactive and we'd be able to stay on top of and stay ahead of the things that are going on. And number five, which is kind of puts all of this, ties the bow around all of this, is it's self-sabotage. So it's hindering just what you could be. And I know maybe I'm starting to sound a little repetitive, but we're only hurting ourselves by procrastinating. Everyone else who's on top of stuff, they get to go to sleep at night and not be anxious and stressed out about something, and the rest of us procrastinating are just like, oh man, I knew I shouldn't have done this. And it's the same result every time. Like you procrastinate on one thing, you get it done, you get to breathe a little bit, then you have another task that comes up and you're like, oh, I've got time. And then that time passes and you're right back where you were with the last thing that you procrastinated on. So from here we turn over to what are the spiritual implications of procrastination. So the scripture I have for this section is Proverbs 24 verses 30 through 34. So we've got, let's see. Here it is. I went past the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed and learned a lesson from what I saw. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. A lot going on there. So first of all, excuse me. First of all, a sluggard, because I looked up this definition, it's a person who is habitually inactive. They're lazy. And the Bible has a lot to say about laziness because I'm doing a separate episode on that in the coming weeks. And you can read the description, the vineyard of this sluggard. So it was totally unkempt. There were thorns everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds. The stone wall wasn't taken care of, so it was in ruins. So everything about this setting was messy. It was unkempt. It was neglected. And so I think this is a great illustration of what our lives can look like if we fall into the trap of procrastinating. It's like you're trying to keep all of the balls in the air, and inevitably something's going to come crashing down, and then after that, it's just a domino effect. So it's like, how long can you keep it up before you start to see the negative effects of that? Now, the other part of this passage that stuck out to me was a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief and scarcely like an armed man. So if you remember toward the beginning of this episode, I was talking about how sometimes maybe we'll disguise our procrastination as taking breaks or resting. And I shared this with you guys in an earlier episode, but at my drum major camp going into my senior year of high school, there was an instructor there who told us, while you were sleeping, someone's getting better and they're going to take your job someday. So, ouch, a little bit harsh to hear as a high schooler who's just trying to learn how to be a drum major. But there was some truth to what he said, and this scripture here kind of corroborates that. It's resting is good, and we should have that in our day-to-day. But there is a point where it's not time to rest. It's time to work. It's time to knock stuff out. So having said all of this, with procrastinating, we cannot serve God's kingdom well this way for a lot of the reasons I already mentioned. It's a poor representation of us, which in turn, if we're claiming to be Christ followers and serve God and love Him and want to work, do our work as unto Him, then procrastinating really isn't the way to go about that, because again, you're not reliable. You're not holding up your end of the bargain with getting your work done down here. And we just don't do our best work when we procrastinate. So I teach college freshmen, as I told y'all earlier, and there was one guy in my class. There there was one student I met with one-on-one because he wanted some help with his writing. So he came to my office, and I had printed out 2 examples of his work that he had submitted to the class. And one of them, there was run-on sentences all throughout the paper, poor punctuation, grammar was bad, the ideas were not fleshed out properly or completely, so the paper was just kind of a mess. The other example of his paper, it was well organized, it was easy to follow, it flowed well, good choice of vocabulary, nice sentence structure. It was night and day difference. And so I told him, hey, so this paper right here is excellent. It's really well written, and it looks like you spent a lot more time on it. And he said he did. He confirmed that because the other paper, the first one, he had written it the night it was due. So their assignments are due 11:59 p.m. on the weekends, and he had written it sometime, I think, during the 11 o'clock hour. And so he was trying to scramble and get that done. And then I just allowed him to see that. I told him, okay, so you see the difference, right? It's not that you don't know how to write. It's that when you don't have the chance to take your time, when you're doing it last minute, it comes out sloppy. And when you do have the time to dedicate to your paper, it comes out much better. So I hoped that was a kind of a wake-up call for him, that it matters taking the time to slow down and actually allowing enough time to go over your work. And so that second paper was a much better representation of his skills and his potential, and I hope that he continues to live up to that. But with continuing with the spiritual implications, procrastination, it's really a lack of stewardship of our gifts, of our resources, and our time. And in Matthew 25, it talks about the parable of the talents. Toward the end of that parable, Jesus is saying, or the master who represents Jesus, says that he says to the servants who oh my gosh, I'm totally butchering this. I don't have it in front of me. The master is talking to the 2 servants who went out and used their talents and got a return on their investment of those talents. So he said, he congratulated them, and he said, enter into your master's happiness. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many. So when we procrastinate, we're not being faithful over the resources or the time or the potential or the talents that we have. We're kind of just carelessly using them, not taking them seriously, thinking that, yeah, I'll get to it later. Like, there's no sense of urgency in using them. And that is actually what got that other servant that I did not mention, the third one who buried the talent he was given in that parable. That's what caused his master to be so upset with him, is he didn't do anything with it, and he was lazy. He called him a wicked and lazy servant. And procrastination it's a not so distant cousin of laziness. They're very closely related. So again, can't wait for y'all to check out the episode on laziness, because there's going to be a lot to say there. But it's, spiritually speaking, when God sees that we are stewarding what he's given us well, and that includes moving with a sense of urgency, with a sense of purpose, and treating it like it's precious, like it's a treasure, then yeah, he'll take note of what we're doing, and he'll be able to promote us and give us more influence, put us in different spaces, or put us in front of a bigger audience who can observe what we're doing for his glory. But if we don't take our gifts seriously, if we procrastinate and put stuff off and we'll get to it, we have that attitude about everything, then we shouldn't be surprised if we stay stuck in the same place for a long time. So we got through the spiritual implications, the reasons, the just how is procrastination harmful, and so I want to kind of land the plane a little bit by talking about practical ways to overcome procrastination and to combat it. So I got 5 things here. I know this has been an episode full of lists, but that's just how I think, y'all. You guys know that by now. So the first one I have is just to write things down. This is something I'm working on for myself to get better at this, because I think writing things down is a pretty simple and profound way to change your life, to change your day to day. Writing things down and having them visible in front of you is the key. So if you have a planner, or if you use your phone and have reminders, have something that you know you're going to check every day so that you can get your stuff done. Number 2, set specific goals and keep those in front of you. So again, that could be writing the goals down. Maybe you have a vision board or a cork board or something where you can put sticky notes and you can see what your goals are every day. That being able to see it is really what's going to be the key. Out of sight, out of mind. And I think that saying is very true. If you don't have anything anchoring you to those goals and they're not visible, then why would you hold yourself accountable to completing them? Speaking of accountability, number 3, have an accountability partner. So this could be another person, a friend, a family member, coworker, someone, or it could just be an alarm or reminder on your phone. Maybe if you're not in a position where you have access to people to hold you accountable with what you're trying to do, then, having a phone alarm doesn't hurt. Number 4, this is one that I do every day at my job. Make daily checklists of your tasks. So you're sensing a theme here is to keep stuff written down or typed out, whatever you need to do. But don't just get up every day and be like, I wonder what's going to happen. It's helpful to actually have a to-do list. And maybe if you're not a list person, if you have some other way that you keep track of your tasks, whatever it is, get that in front of you. Because it really feels good to me, and I know I'm not the only one, where you can go down your list and check stuff off and know that it's done and you feel good about it. And number 5, which I've hinted at a few times in this episode, is build breaks into your day. So taking breaks is good. If you think back to my hustle culture episode, if you haven't listened to it, go check it out. But hustle culture, the idea that you have to constantly be working and don't stop and sleep is for the weak, no, that's not sustainable. We have to rest, we have to take breaks, and we have to get enough sleep. So those are all things that you can build into your day to be more productive and to fight off that urge to procrastinate because the task seems too challenging. So there you have it, guys. That is procrastination, something that we all have struggled with at one point or another. And, it seems harmless, and for some stuff, maybe it is. There's some smaller tasks, but just keep in mind that if you build up a habit of procrastinating on small stuff, then it can easily translate over to the larger things that maybe have more serious consequences. But I appreciate you guys listening. As always, social media, I'm on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Life at Peace. So go recommend this episode to your friends, text it to somebody, call someone to have them check it out, whatever you need to do. But I highly encourage you to share this, and I think laziness is going to be the next episode. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. But thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it, and take care. Peace.